Hey gang, welcome again to this edition of the Ministry Show. It's so great to have you listen in and learn and apply different things. And today I'm so excited because we have Sean Buchanan here from Aware 3. And if you've never heard of Aware 3, they're one of our sponsors. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
Definitely an honor for us. We want to talk about this digital technology stuff that's just going wild out there.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, we were talking a few minutes ago just about the propensity of the church to be a little bit behind the curve, and we'll get into that. But before we do, can you tell me about your name? Like Aware 3, what does that even mean?
Thank you, Chris, for having me and allowing us to be a part of what you're doing with the Ministry Show. You know, there's a lot of funny names out there, right? With tech companies, they're kind of notorious for that. So you've got, Google or whatever and funny names. Largely the word aware, there's not as much meaning behind that. There is significance to the three. Our big statement, who we are as a company, mobile is our platform. We build branded apps for churches. That's what we do. But why we do that is that we want to help churches grow by connecting their people. So people being engaged in the life of the church, and engagement can mean a lot of things. But to us, it really means three things. And so the three behind Aware 3 is connection, communication, and generosity. So those three things are aspects of how mobile technology can be a bridge to help people relate to and understand your specific church.
Man, no wonder I like Aware 3 so much. I love the word engagement because us as pastors and church leaders, if people don't engage, we can't get anywhere missionally. So Talk to me about that engagement and what it means not only to you, but the company and how they make that happen.
Yeah, well, I'll tell a little bit about the background actually of Aware 3. We're a privately owned company and we're headquartered in Kansas City. I live here in Colorado Springs and get to work remote, which is a great honor. But Tony and Joe, the founders, this was simply birthed out of their own experience. They were involved in a large church in the Kansas City area. And 4 years ago when they launched, Tony had a young son, an infant at the time. And the church was doing a promotion for a volunteer sign up. And so they directed everybody to, the info table at the lobby. Every church has one, right?
Uh-huh.
And so there's Tony's wife with her 6-month-old infant in their arm, and he's crying and screaming, and he wants lunch, and the line is, 20 people deep, and they got one volunteer with a piece of paper, and he just said, there's got to be a better way. And Tony and Joe both came from a large mobile company in their background, and so they approached the church and said, hey, I think we can help solve some things to make life easier for people. We live in a mobile-first world now. Let's make some solutions that bridge that gap. And so that was kind of the genesis of Aware 3.
Wow. No wonder it worked so well. It was born out of solving a real problem and grassroots.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Absolutely.
I love that. Let's talk, if you would, a little bit, Sean, because you're like the resident expert about mobile and all that. What's happening within our culture that makes this mobile wave just a tsunami that's taking over?
Yeah, I will resist the urge to get on too many of my soapboxes because, as you know, I have a few of those, right? As you mentioned, church and technology have a tenuous relationship, and sometimes church is a few years behind the curve. And I think there's good and bad with that. It takes a while for church to understand a new technology to decide, does this fit with something that is ancient? God's truths never change. And what's never changed about the human condition, about humanity, is that we need one another. God built us for relationship. And that's why engagement is really the product that we have. Mobile is simply the vehicle that we use to address that. So if 10 or 15 years from now, we all have little microchips implanted in our forehead or something like that, then maybe that'll be the vehicle. I don't know. But today it's mobile. And 2015 was the first year that mobile browsing surpassed desktop browsing. And that is true across demographics. So not just, everybody thinks, of course, millennials first and whatnot. That's obvious. Millennials, it's the first thing they look at in the morning and the last thing they look at night. But it's true for multiple generations. I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm a little older than a millennial. And then even boomers and my parents, they're mobile as well. And so I think the world is shifting. And 500 years ago, it was Gutenberg and the printing press that revolutionized our access to the word. Today, it's mobile technology that's shifting our culture. Because we live in a mobile-first world, we have to ask the questions of how do we connect people to the life of God, to His church, to His plan, using this platform to make it more accessible for how we live our lives today in a mobile-first world.
Well, I can attest to what you're saying. As an older guy, I'm probably more your father's generation, Sean. So
Quite, but yes.
there was an opportunity that came up in our church recently, and it was text to give and all that. And I thought,
Mhm.
oh, geez, these people are making me do something so stupid. But I was a little upset about it, frankly.
Yeah.
But after I did it, I was like, that's the easiest thing in the world. I've not written a check to the church since,
Yeah.
but I've given them a ton of money all through mobile.
That's proof in the pudding. I mean, you look at accessibility, how many people come to church with a checkbook anymore? And I don't even carry cash really anymore. As you look at that, like I write 2 checks in my life. I write one to my church and one to my babysitter. And if I could get my babysitter on PayPal, I'd probably toss the checkbook altogether. I wouldn't even have one anymore. That's one example. Generosity is certainly mobile. 59% of all people over the age of 66 gave a gift online in the year 2014. That's a 3-year-old stat. Imagine how much greater that's
Wow.
become in the
Yeah.
last few years. So it is true that it's not just a millennial trajectory, but it's changing a lot of the ways that we expect people to work. And so the church can either look at this and accept it and ask, how does this relate to what we're doing, to the communities and environments that we're creating, or they can resist it. I would advocate that we embrace it.
Yeah, technology always wins.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of time. I'm Pastor so-and-so at ABC Church USA. Help me understand how to implement, or how you at Aware 3, not just you, but the company,
Mhm.
makes it an easy transition to mobile.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we offer a lot of features. The big 3 that I mentioned, the categories of features around improving connection, making it easier for people to connect, streamlining communication, so people get the information that they need to in the way that they want to, and then making generosity accessible so that it's easier to do that. But you're not going to every church use all of those features all at once day one. And so what's important, the best tip is to define what you want to accomplish that is a result of who you already are. So what is organic, what's natural to who you are, and just release a few things that expand the capabilities of people to address those needs. Maybe you've got an upcoming fall launch where you're going to be promoting small groups. Well, how can mobile make that more accessible than just the paper sign up? So I'm not suggesting that we get rid of the paper signups, and with the proliferation in the last decade of social media, I don't know if you've had the experience recently of being a first-time visitor in a church, but I have. It's funny, the scripture that talks about where Moses was told, everyone did what was right according to their own eyes. You hear the announcements and it's like, oh, well, if you want to sign up for the men's ministry, you go on this Facebook group, and the youth group's on this Instagram account, and the small groups are on some website or some paper form in the lobby. It's like, you got to, as a first-time guest, that is incredibly overwhelming. And I get home, well, as you know, I have 5 children.
Yeah.
By the time I get those guys for lunch and some of them down for naps and whatnot, I don't remember where you told me to go. So if we can consolidate, we're not eliminating things. Everybody was fearful when the internet came about and email became a thing that paper would maybe go away. Well, we still have paper, we still use it, but we use it differently than we did 20 and 30 years ago. And that's the same thing with mobile. So for your church that's maybe in a rural area or maybe has an older demographic and you're not sure how they're going to embrace technology, start simple, start small, and start with something that's organic to what you're already doing.
I want to back up just a moment and remind everybody that's on this ministry show of something that you've already said, but it was pretty quick and pretty natural for you. You actually create a branded mobile app for any church. Did I hear that correctly?
You're right. Yep. So when we're going to the App Store, it's their name, it's their church.
So whether it's Android, whether it's iOS,
Mhm.
iPhone,
Yep,
whatever,
yep.
and you build the app for them.
Yep.
It's not like we give you the tools and you got to go build this app.
Right.
Wow,
Yep.
that's
So
incredible.
we put all the hard work into that. We build the infrastructure, but then you do maintain it yourself. You own it yourself. So you don't have to come to us for every little tweak. Some of us remember back in the early days of web when you wanted to change the calendar on the church calendar on the website, you had to go call the tech company and it took them a week and then it was irrelevant.
Too late.
So we give you a management portal that's drag and drop. I mean, if you know how to manage a Facebook profile and change your profile photo, you're going to be able to manage this app. It's that easy. We allow you to change it on the fly and in real time, and we're there with you all the time.
I know we have our work cut out for us
Mhm.
as it relates to the mobile piece of it. But what I hear you saying is make mobile an option.
Mhm.
Don't make it a demand. Don't make it don't change everything. Just make it an option. And those that like it, like me now,
Mhm.
really like it. And those that don't, we have our other system.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not going to eliminate, and I think that's what people are fearful of. So I go to a church that is multi-generational, and because of that, there are people that want to hold on and protect the traditions that they've known because it's what they're comfortable with. And I want to, as somebody who's maybe a middle-aged person that has kids that are kind of in that Gen Z, era, and then people that I serve that are boomers and beyond, greatest generation, see that as we're not taking away, we're adding to. It's a both and, not an either or. And I think because of that, each generation makes the church its own. They put their own fingerprints on what God is doing in and with this generation. And this is one option of how this generation is expressing itself. And so we're simply saying, here's a mechanism by which the church can use to reach that generation. And that generation can be somebody in their 20s or somebody in their 70s. We just don't know.
Yeah. I didn't expect this to happen, but this has reminded me of a conversation I had with my son several years back. He called me up on the phone, which is very unusual. And so I thought, oh man, there's a problem. His name's Joey. Joey says, Dad, will you do me a favor? I'm like, of course I will. What do you need? He's like, will you quit leaving me voicemails?
Text me like a normal person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I had to be schooled.
Yeah.
As a dad, of course, we'll do things quicker for our kids than probably anybody else. And it's like, I just got schooled by my kid.
That's great.
I'm in the, I'm an old fart, basically. So that was voicemail. And so this just seems like a natural next iteration.
Mm-hmm.
But can you help those that are listening and even myself understand the transition to mobile or implementing something like this? Mm-hmm. Have you seen some mistakes made or, some kind of thing? Maybe they're not even bad mistakes or anything, but boy, if you avoid this, then that will go better for you as you introduce mobile to your congregation. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the biggest component when it comes to mobile is that it works with some of the tools and systems that you're already accustomed to. And so when we say add to, we don't want to give more work to an already busy administrator who's maintaining 3 calendars in 6 places or whatever, as one example. In our solution, we have connections and bridges to other tools and other solutions like Church Community Builder or your church management software, calendaring systems. And so what it can do is it can consolidate. I mentioned the visitor that is being pointed in 1,000 different directions because each ministry uses a different platform. Well, now the pastor who's giving announcements can simply say, just download our app, just download our app. So it's going to change some of the habits because it centralizes and consolidates things. And so maybe the mistake is simply trying to bite off more than you can chew. We talked about that one a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
But the concept being that don't try to do too much and do everything at the neglect of the past.
What I'm hearing is you can incrementally add.
Absolutely.
Through Aware 3, and I don't have to change everything all at one time. I can add one thing, kind of get used to it, make sure my team knows how to run it and everything, add something else.
Absolutely.
That's great.
I think that's the same philosophy that we saw when web first came out. So there was a rush at one point for churches to get websites. They all realized, okay, we just got to have one. It went from one of those scary technology things to one of those just assumptions. And we're on the cusp of that with mobile. It's going from a scary forefront thing to just kind of a commonplace thing. And so as that transition happens in our society, the same knowledge is that you want to do it in increments because we want to do something that's going to be used and natural. With a website, if you just put one out there and then never updated the calendar, never updated your information, it's really not doing you any good. It's not serving you because it's not current. It's not being part of the church life. And so an app, we want to add those tools that are going to be where people are, whether that's finding a small group, whether that's filling out a registration form, and then just add the next one and add the next one. As your team gets used to it, as people get used to that being an option of how to communicate, we're continuing to iterate and implement the next thing. And so it makes life a lot easier for those on both sides of the aisle, the people that are in leadership or on staff, and the people in the pew that are maybe not even sure if they want to connect at that church yet.
Now, let's say that I'm sort of interested, but I'm nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, I want to jump into the pool.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about the temperature of the water.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a little hesitant, maybe.
Tell me a little bit about what you think people might be nervous about. What are some of the areas that you've seen that?
I might think of some of my congregants as this end of the world type stuff, or this is too far-fetched, or I might be concerned about the reaction of some in my congregation.
Mm-hmm.
The church just wants my money, whatever it might be. I know you don't do just money, but I mean, there's all kinds of different bubblings out there. So how can I help make mobile sensible to my congregation?
Mm-hmm. And so an interesting stat, actually, there was a survey on churchleaders.com about why people leave the church. And you're a big proponent of learning how to close the back door. So it's not just having a wide front door and having an amazing worship experience and sermon and whatnot, but it's having the ability for people to connect. And the number one reason that people walk out the back door is that they did not feel a sense of being connected. You can have a very friendly church, people are smiling, you've got great ushers that are personable and a great experience, but if that individual does not know how to connect to the life of your church in a meaningful way, they're going to walk right out the back door. Mobile is simply a platform that makes that more accessible and easier for some people. We're not saying everyone, we're not going to try and force those people that are resistors, that's fine. We're still going to have the paper sign up. You're still welcome here, you're still included. We're not excluding anyone. We're just making another avenue that's available. And this was the same conversation you can probably remember 20 and 30 years ago when people first wanted to put screens in the church and have video or slides, or, when we wanted to bring a drum into the worship set or a piano versus an organ. I mean, the church has had this conversation many times. Mobile is simply today's version of it.
Wow, that is only half the interview from Sean. I hope you can see how mobile can help you in your quest to lead your people and pastor. Next week on the Ministry Show, we'll conclude with Sean Buchanan and Aware 3.